The slasher just got a complete rework, buffing its stats, giving it a new bleed mechanic, and much more. In this video, I'll be showcasing all the stat changes, values, and uses of this tower, then give my personal ranking of how good it is and whether or not you should buy it for 750 Robux. So, hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get started. Its placement cost increased from 450 to 1,500 cash, making it no longer as much of an early game tower. It also no longer throws knives, with it instead doing a critical hit every 3 swings, and at later levels inflicting a bleed effect, but we'll talk about that later. At level 0, its damage increased from 3 to 6, and it now deals 15 crit damage every 3 swings. Its swing rate decreased from 0.558 to 0.408, and its DPS went from 5.38 to 22.06. At level 1, its total cost increased from 800 to 2,300 cash, and its damage increased from 4 to 6. It now deals 15 crit damage every 3 swings. Its swing rate decreased from 0.408 to 0.358, and its DPS went from 9.8 to 25.14. It also now gets hidden detection when it used to only have it past level 2. At level 2, its total cost increased from 1,650 to 4,800 cash, and its damage increased from 6 to 20, and now deals 50 crit damage every 3 swings. Its swing rate increased from 0.408 to 0.708, its range decreased from 6 to 5.5, and its DPS went from 14.71 to 42.37. It also inflicts a bleed effect every time it attacks an enemy, which can stack multiple times. When the enemy is no longer being attacked, the bleed will gradually activate, each one dealing a percentage of the zombie's original total health. The max amount of bleed you can stack on an enemy is 30, and if this limit is reached, then all the bleed will activate at once, dealing a ton of damage. I wish I could say how much of the enemy's health the bleed deals, but I honestly have no clue. From my testing, breakers with 30 HP took 5 damage from each bleed, which is 1/6 of their total health. However, slow giants only took 19 damage despite having 1,600 HP. That's only 1.1% of their max health, which is a huge difference. So I'm extremely confused on how the game decides how much damage each enemy is going to take, but it does seem to be consistent with the amount of health. I've tried getting answers from developers and the balancers, but nobody seems to know. So this is just going to have to remain a mystery for now. At level 3, its total cost increased from 4,000 to 11,800 cash, and its damage increased from 10 to 45, and now does 135 crit damage every 3 swings. Its swing rate increased from 0.308 to 0.608, its range decreased from 6 to 5.5, and its DPS went from 32.48 to 123.36. Finally, at level 4, its total cost increased from 11,500 to 31,800 cash, its normal damage increased from 24 to 60, and now does 210 crit damage every 3 swings. Its swing rate increased from 0.308 to 0.508, its range decreased from 7 to 6, and its DPS went from 77.92 to 216.54. It also now inflicts 2 times as much bleed every time it attacks an enemy. However, the bleed effect deals the same damage. This tower is going to be used a lot like the Warden, being a kind of early game tower, but primarily being used in the mid to late game. If you get it in the early game, it can do pretty well against low health crowds, as its fast swing rate lets it hit a lot of enemies. At level 0, it has a value of 14.71 DPS per 1k spent, which is actually really high, but keep in mind, this is a melee tower. Every melee tower has really good value, as they have to compensate for their short range. The slasher also gets hidden detection after level 1, so you could use it against the early hiddens, but I wouldn't personally use it in the early game, as it's not very reliable. It's a short range melee tower, and it can't stun or knock back enemies like the Warden or Brawler. This makes it not great against enemies like Fallens, which are pretty tanky and speedy and show up relatively early. They run right past it before it has any chance to do significant damage. However, in the mid to late game, the max slasher can be a pretty powerful option against slow tanky bosses. It costs a total of 31,800 cash and deals 216.54 DPS, giving it a value of 6.81 DPS per 1k spent. That's not that good for a melee tower, however, its bleed effect makes up for this. Since it applies 2 bleed with each hit at max level, it can quickly reach the cap of 30 bleed and deal huge damage against high health enemies. The fact that it deals a percentage of health is really nice. Even in Fallen mode, spamming a ton of level 5 slashers is an effective strategy and can take care of some very beefy units. I would recommend getting a couple of max level slashers and setting them all to strongest targeting. This will allow them to make the most out of their bleed effect, as they'll target the enemies with the most health. Then just get some sort of crowd control tower to clean up and you're all set. This means the slasher does very well with towers like the Mortar or Golden Pyromancer. The bleed effect and its high DPS of 216.54 at max level means it can actually deal some significant damage against final bosses. Against a Molten boss, a stack of 30 bleed does 1,890 damage. And as you can see in this clip, 30 bleeds are reached extremely quickly. This is also helped by the fact that it has a very good placement limit of 12, so it's pretty easy to spam. The only issue is that this tower doesn't have any stun immunity, so once the Molten boss stomps, it's gonna walk out of the range before they can recover. Overall, I mainly use this tower in the mid to late game, as while it can be used in the early game, it's just not the best choice. It's too expensive and unreliable. However, it has a high DPS and a powerful bleed mechanic. Because of that, I'm gonna rank it as a solid A tier. It's a pretty good tower, however, 750 Robux is a very expensive price. It's not necessarily a tower you need, so only buy it if you have that much Robux to spare. Keep in mind though, its bleed mechanic is a bit mysterious, so as we learn more, it could turn out this tower is a lot worse or a lot lot better than we thought. But anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below how you would rank this tower and whether or not you agree with me. And if you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to join the Blue Head Mafia. Also, if you want to talk to me, consider checking out my Discord. We got some pretty cool features, like a custom party finder bot that will automatically pair you up with other people who are trying to do the same strategy. There's a link to the server pinned in the comments. And finally, I want to give a huge shout out to these channel members for supporting my content. If you want to add me as a friend on Roblox or get early access to some of my videos, consider becoming a channel member. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. Anyways, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.